Good afternoon, crew members. It's Krebs here to show you guys actually what we know so far of Company of Heroes 2. Now, this is actually going to be specifically talking about Company of Heroes 2 that we've learned thus far from Gamescom, okay? So it's not going to be the articles from a long time ago when we first heard about Company of Heroes 2. I mean, that was quite generic and basic stuff. There's a lot of new details that have come out since the Gamescom hands-on experience that the press have managed to actually have with it. Now, it's only been with the press. There's not been the consumer hands-on. So I'm going to be taking all these articles that have been posted out there and just making a collaboration of everything that we know so far that has stood out that I thought is worth actually mentioning to you guys about Company of Heroes 2. Really exciting stuff, okay? So pardon me if you will, I'm going to be actually reading quite a lot of notes here. Obviously not in a robotic sort of fashion. I'm going to elaborate a little bit on this, but consider this almost like a podcast, alright? So away we go. Now the first thing that I want to actually point out is that all these visuals that I'm going to be showing in this video are based on DirectX 9. The game is actually going to go up to DirectX 11. We know the amount of quality that goes between those two, the differences between them. We know DirectX 11 obviously has much higher textures, better textures, and much more details in terms of graphics in comparison to DirectX 9, okay? But everything that we see here is currently DirectX 9 and it's only being used for test purposes, so we can actually get these visuals, okay? So the first thing that I want to talk about is True Sight. We heard about True Sight ages and ages ago when the Company of Heroes 2 was first announced, but there's been a bit more details about it. So we know the fact that True Sight allows men to set up ambushes, or players to set up ambushes. They can hide behind trees, they can hide behind buildings, and that's the whole idea. You don't have this circle effect in Company of Heroes where you can't, where you just see over buildings and such. It seems a little bit ridiculous, but now they're taking this more realistic approach like Men of War and having this objectives where basically obstacles can prevent you from actually seeing anything behind it. Now that's also extended to other things such as burning vehicles and buildings that are on fire, the smoke that's produced from it, and also, I don't know, other smoke, the smoke from mortar rounds or something like that. Any sort of smoke, blizzards from the weather system can actually cause obscuring of line of sight. So it's really cool that these things are going to be happening. Some people have been saying, oh, I'm not really too sure if it actually is a nice thing about the game, but it's certainly going to change the gameplay. And I think that's something that we're going to have to sort of live with Company of Heroes, and I think it's going to be bringing a lot more dynamics and cool stuff in terms of strategy with the game. So I think in that respect, I think it's going to be actually really, really good. Now, let's talk about some of the weather, since we're on that topic. Weather has an effect on unit movement. We already heard about that. We know how the blizzards can cause like snow to gather, and it's hard for units to actually go through it, but there's been a few more details about it. These blizzards are actually randomly generated. That's part of the cold tech that Company of Heroes 2 Relic has been really trying to put forward here. Cold tech, the True Sight system. These blizzards are going to be randomly generated, and some people were talking about some really cool, nice little details, such as Halftracks. When they're trying to start in heavy snow, say you're got a Halftrack that has just stopped, it's trying to start itself and move, the tracks will just spin out of control. They'll just keep on spinning and spinning. They can't get any sort of traction. They can't get their group. They can't move. And that's actually a really weird feature, but really nice small details. Flamethrowers can blast snow to create new paths of the heat melting away the snow. Half tracks are important to keep out units out of blizzards and move them around quickly. So it's obviously, a bit important. In a Company of Heroes, we have these half-tracks, and they don't really seem to do a whole lot. We usually replenish our guys near them, just reinforce, but we don't tend to actually transport guys across the map because we don't really have a need to do that. It's a bit time-consuming, if anything, but there's going to be a whole point behind it now in Company of Heroes 2. You're going to have this environment that's going to be holding you back, your infantry back, and so by having these half-tracks here, now we can actually transport them quickly from point A to point B. So that's actually a really cool feature to have this better use of the half-tracks. But as I was first saying in one of the first points here, what is it? Important to keep units out of blizzards. Now, if we're going to be talking about infantry and blizzards, you'll see why in a second, why it's going to be important. So infantry actually can die from hypothermia in this game. Seems a bit weird, you think that a game would be all about just killing each other, and that's what we usually are accustomed to in RTSs, but there's going to be this whole environmental aspect of it, if you haven't already started to feel this, that you're going to have blizzards that are going to be causing hypothermia to your infantry, and that's going to be indicated by a thermometer icon Shows body temperature. If it goes red, they start to lose health until they are dead. Now, that seems a little bit crazy. Okay, how can hypothermia do that? But there are ways to minimize the losses. Apparently, in the top right corner of the screen, there's going to be a unit emblem, a symbol that represents that unit, okay? Sort of like when we're hotkeying our units, right? There's going to be a unit emblem. And beside that, there will be a thermometer that will actually show when it's going down. So you can sort of minimize those losses and prevent any sort of your units from dying. Of course, it's going to probably take micro, okay? Now, how are you going to be able to prevent your losses and keep your guys warm? Well, you can do a few things. You can take engineers to actually build fire pits, so your guys huddle around them. And just, you know, gather warmth. You can go occupy an unoccupied building, so you could be an occupied Wall Street protester in a way, I don't know. You can go occupy an unoccupied building and keep yourself warm, or you can take cover against anything that is yellow cover or better. So, you know, in Company of Heroes 2, yellow, green cover. So take cover behind that, and that will provide you a bit of shelter against the blizzard, alright? A few other things that we should talk about. Oh god, there's actually a lot of stuff that I still need to talk about here. Consider this a podcast, okay? Capturing strategic points can be the same as Company of Heroes. So, you know, when you go up to a strategic point, you just capture it with your infantry, but at the same time, your infantry are sort of weaker because they're busy capturing it. One guy is just not going to be firing, and they just take fire much more easily. They're easier to kill. You can do the same thing in Company of Heroes 2, but alternatively, you can actually stand in a small radius around the point, and you can still combat your enemy whilst you're capturing, alright? So you don't actually directly have to be capturing, you can just stand around it in a small radius, you know, take up some cover behind some sandbags, and just, you know, keep on fighting the battle whilst you're capturing. So that's really cool. That's going to be bringing in stuff like that. Small details, but going to be changing the game quite substantially here. Apparently they were talking about that actually negating some of the usage of like mines. You know, when you're trying to put mines down next to a point because you know the units have to go capture it in Company of Heroes. Well, is that going to be a total big point of actually doing that? Not exactly sure now. Maybe some people are still going to do it, but maybe it's not going to be the wisest thing of putting mines down right in front of a strategic point, okay? Apparently there's actually a little bit of debate with what I'm about to tell you here, but the way that capture these strategic points actually work now is going to be changed in Company of Heroes 2. So from the way that I've heard is that you can capture a point, and you can actually choose if you want it to be a fuel point or a munitions point, okay? You know how in Company of Heroes 2 you either capture a point that's already chosen to be a fuel point or a cutoff point, which is manpower point, or to be a fuel point munitions or manpower point. I hope I said that right. I have a feeling I might have said fuel point twice. But anyway, munitions, fuel, or manpower point. Now in Company of Heroes 2, you'll be able to capture the point. You can take an engineer who can build a munitions or fuel dump next to that point. And once you've done that, that gives you resources of that kind. So you can actually choose. Now, what does that mean to you? You actually choose how you want your strategy to develop. Do you need more of this resource? Do you need more of that resource? You can choose how you want to go about actually with your teching order and how you want your strategy to be. At the same time, your opponent needs to actually find that out as well. It's not as easy as just looking at, oh, the tactical map. This is a fuel point over there. He's captured that, so I know he's got a lot of fuel. That means he's going to go for tanks. It's not going to be like that in Company of Heroes 2. Instead, what is going to happen is that you're going to have to recon. You're going to have to go scout your opponent's resource points, see if they have more munitions, see if they have more fuel, see if they have a mixture, and then you can actually maybe tell then if they are going for a certain particular strategy or something like that, okay? So that is an interesting aspect. As I was saying, that's not a final thing. Apparently there's actually a little bit of debate between Relic at the moment if they want to actually continue with that into the final development of the game, but I think that's actually really cool. I never thought of that, but you know, if you can do that and that just makes the game more complex in its structure and more strategic, you know what, go for it. I'm all up for that. Let's head on to the next part. About vehicles here. Vehicle operators can now be killed inside vehicles whilst under heavy fire. Alright, so you know how in Company of Heroes you have vehicles, all the men are generally safe inside until the tank is blown up, okay? It's not like that. In this game, vehicles can actually be abandoned. Your infantry can actually take command of a vehicle. Again, a feature of sort of like Men of War. imagine, if you will, you had a tank here, and it was empty, no crew members inside. You could take your own squad, see this empty tank, just put them in there, and in a way, your infantry are like a separate entity controlling this extension, right? You can call out your infantry afterwards if you don't need the tank anymore, and then move on, right? But what they were saying here is that vehicle operators can be killed whilst under heavy fire. So, you know, I don't know if that means like if a tank penetrates your hull and then operator inside is killed. But they also were saying that tank crew members can actually poke their heads out of the tank to get increased line of sight for that vehicle. But at the same time, that makes them exposed to light arms fire, and so they can be killed. This opens up a whole, you know, opportunity of different sort of things that we can think about with the vehicles. I mean, for example, if you went into an engagement and things were turning to crap, basically, will you want to lose all your men inside the vehicles? Maybe what you'd want to do is actually retreat. I know you'd be losing a vehicle, but you'd want to minimize your losses. So you'd actually take your men, these separate entity, get them outside of the vehicle, and, you know, retreat them, okay? So that is something really cool that they're going to be doing with the vehicles. Now, here's going to be smaller points that I'm going to mention. It's not going to be big topics anymore. It's going to be just points, bullet points now. Infantry can now vault over medium-heighted obstacles. We heard about this vaulting system. They can just go over anything that's medium height. So fences, small hedges. I think there's some other things as well that they can jump over. Walls, for example. Snipers can no longer cloak unless in cover. So you know how frustrating it would be in Company of Heroes. You have a sniper, American sniper or a German sniper, hit your guy, you'd want to go kill them, but then they would just mystically cloak out of nowhere in an open field. And it was like, okay, this is a bit strange. They can't do that anymore. Now they have to actually have cover of yellow, orange cover, or higher, so green cover as well. So imagine, if you will, it's sort of like a Fallschirmjäger cloak or a Piet squad ambush, a Piet ambush, because those require you to be in yellow or orange cover already in order for it to be used. Orange or greater cover, orange or green, for it to be used. So imagine, if you will, the sniper is going to be like that. I suppose that's actually a good change. I actually like that. Just means you have to be a bit more wiser if you're snipers. I think Relic actually addressed this issue because they knew that the current state of snipers in Company of Heroes was a bit too powerful just for, you know, a single man. Apparently the Soviets are going to have 2-man sniper squads as well. Don't know exactly how that's going to work in terms of balance, but that's what it's going to be like at the moment. Ice has thickness. Ice is thickness. So imagine, if you will, you have a river, and then a blizzard comes over. The river will freeze over, and then you'll have ice. Of course, this ice will have different degrees of thickness around it. I'm not exactly sure where it will depend on the thickness. Maybe around the coast, you know, there of the river, there will be thicker ice, and then towards the center there will be more shallow ice. At least that's what I could imagine it to be, but not exactly sure how that's going to work. But apparently it's going to be really important, that ice thickness, because what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to, say you have a mortar round or artillery, you'll be able to fire on the ice, it'll be able to crack, break, and anything that's crossing over that path will just, you know, sink down into the abyss of that river. Cold, frozen river. All the crew members inside a tank will die, infantry will die, whatever, okay? I'm not sure if you can get actually infantry out of there, like, you know, swim out. That'd be cool. I suppose maybe they'd get hypothermia or something, but I don't know. But they were also saying that, say if you have one tank crossing over the river, it'll be fine. But if you have 2 tanks crossing over the river, then it might start cracking. If you have 3 tanks that are crossing over a river, then that 3rd tank might actually fall in. It just really depends on how much your tank can, the ice can handle in terms of thickness and such like that. The ice will crack over time, okay? Apparently the ice can also cause units to slip when you're going across it. So especially faster vehicles, for example, you'll really notice this. They will head onto the ice and then just sort of be slipping in a way. Very cool stuff. Squads can merge in order to replenish full numbers. They were giving some specific examples here where you will have a 6-man MG team for the Soviets. They'll die or something, you'll have 1 man left in that. What you can actually do, rather than retreating that squad all the way back to your base like in Company of Heroes to get it back up to full men, is that you could take another squad of just normal units and just combine them together, and then you'll be back up to speed. Okay, so that is another nice important details that is drastically going to change the dynamics of the game. I mean, if you just added that feature alone into Company of Heroes 2, that would hugely change what Company of Heroes would be like. But I'm not saying that that's the only important feature. There's going to be many, but it's just one of these things that are going to be changing drastically what we know Company of Heroes to be like. In terms of important things for you, this isn't really important with me because I don't play with computers, but if you're into AI, you know, skirmish matches and campaigns, apparently the AI has been improved. In fact, they were given an example where the AI was actually using bait squads, and I've actually talked about this in a few normal Company of Heroes casts. But say if they had a bait squad, you take a bait squad up to an MG so that the MG would fire at that bait squad, and then you have a flanking unit around. Alternatively, you can use a bait squad for sight, and they were giving a specific example here where the computer was actually using a bait squad to come forward, give their tank behind the infantry sight in order for the tank to fire and decimate your infantry. So really cool that the computer is thinking a little bit more better now. However, just my experience with, you know, other AI and other games, and I suppose Company of Heroes as well, it's not the best, so I don't have the highest of hopes, but just from what that sounds, it's better. Okay, so we'll have to see what that's going to be like. Final thing, and the final point here of this podcast, is that the in-game menu has changed, but it is easy to pick up. Apparently the in-game menu, as in, like, you know, where you pick your units down at the bottom that you want to deploy, build, or your map, it looks a little bit different. I've actually seen a picture, and you should see this in front of your screen. It looks a little bit different in terms of where the, I don't know, resources and stuff like that is, but it's easy to pick up, so no big worries, guys. So now, that is all that I want to talk about. That's all the points that I could gather from Gamescom. Okay, so that is specifically from Gamescom, not other articles from, I don't know, a long time ago. Okay, that's what we've managed to find out recently, and what I've managed to interpret to you guys, okay? Alright, so that is all the points. I'm really looking forward to what Company of Heroes 2 is going to be. It seems like all these points are just drastically going to change what we know Company of Heroes to be like, but I think for the better. I'm really looking forward to Company of Heroes 2. I hope you guys, you crew members, are as well. Now, am I going to be doing more things like this in the future, more podcasts? Of course I am! As soon as we get more details, hell yeah! In fact, I'm going to Eurogamer at the end of September. I've booked my tickets, my hotel, going to Eurogamer at the end of September. I'm gonna play Company of Heroes. It's gonna be consumer hands-on, not only press. So I'm gonna be playing it. I'm gonna try to get footage if I'm allowed to, and I'm gonna show you guys it. I'm looking forward to it really a lot. Okay, if that's an accurate way of expressing myself. But of course, guys, until next time when I can do more videos like this, I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.